The Australian government is throwing a lifeline to zoos and aquariums struggling because of the shutdowns. The pandemic has forced many wildlife parks to close with the resulting loss of revenue from visitor fees. The government will provide $95 million to help cover operating costs and keep organisations afloat.
There is an animal welfare issue here that we as Australians need to step up and protect those custodians of animal welfare in this country and ensure they can continue to provide that with safety and sanctuary. It's also about future generations of species that these zoos play an important part in generating and making sure that we, not only here in Australia but around our world, play an important part in conservation.
Federal Emergency Management Minister David Littleproud there. Now, Tim Faulkner is the General Manager of the Australian Reptile Park near Gosford, and he joins us now from the New South Wales Central Coast. Tim, g'day. So just first of all, explain for us how tough the last couple of months have been.
Yeah, well, from the Reptile Park perspective, I mean, as a unique organisation, we facilitate wildlife tourism, but also save lives through antivenom production and facilitate broad-scale conservation. And the reality is, without visitors, we can't go into a hibernation that's typically, close the doors and stop expenses. We've got to facilitate all aspects of the business that aren't tourism. So it's been very challenging. I mean, industry has really rallied together and we've bunkered down. And the reality is the recognition that accompanies the fund relief from government, but the recognition that highlights our importance to community and conservation is equally as important.
Yeah. And Tim, I'll just get you to try to look into the camera as much as possible if you can. I know it feels kind of weird.
Sure.
But so explain for us, what are your ongoing costs there?
Yeah, so aside from staff, which have been well looked after with JobKeeper, you're talking that for animal expenses, you've got food and hygiene, cleaning, vet bills, ongoing preventative treatments, utilities, quite a diverse range of expenses.
Yeah. And so what's your most expensive animal to keep fed for a year? Do your tigers cost like 13 grand a year or something like that?
Well, remembering that Reptile Park is a real native experience. So we're in a bush setting and our overheads in that regard, we don't have tigers or elephants or the species that would really, really bring those costs up. So for us, it's pretty balanced. We don't have a real standout, high-profile, high-expense species. It's more an organisational capacity and facilitating, and covering expenses across the entire collection, both wildlife tourism and conservation.
Yeah. And so are you aware of how much money you're going to possibly be able to get out of this package? How do you feel about the federal government announcing that it's going to put money towards this?
Look, I feel really well represented by our peak zoo body, the Zoo Aquarium Association, who have essentially, worked with government and facilitated this. We feel really well represented. Be that the staff that are still facilitating the animal care roles and the JobKeeper package, through to the announcement of funding now, it's quite radical for us. I don't know yet what we're eligible for. My understanding is that it's a percentage of operational expenditure, and so that's quite easy to break down. I don't know whether that's a snapshot of what the operational expenditure was this week, which is much less than it was 3 months ago, or how that's averaged out.
Yeah. And is it kind of daunting thinking about how you're going to actually apply for this kind of thing, because it can be pretty complicated?
Look, it's not daunting. It's a process. And, at the moment, the last 2 months feel like 2 years.
Yeah.
And each week we're going through a different process, as I'm sure all industries are. And so, the process itself is quite welcome, because at the end of it, we're well looked after.
And so if this keeps on going on for another 4 months, say, are you going to be able to keep afloat?
Absolutely. I mean, the thing is, I guess too, this announcement is unexpected. I mean, it's not something that we've personally lobbied for. Look, the reality is that over the last few years, the Reptile Park, which I'll talk on behalf of, we won the most prestigious New South Wales State Business Excellence Award. We won Tourism Gold last year. We're a resilient business. And so my personal view is that if you can't sustain 3 or 6 months of downturn in market, in this case closure, temporary, that's the business that we're in. So we've got a great buffer. The reality is that we chew into our savings, we chew into what our capital expenses would have been or our conservation projects would have been. And realistically, this type funding will not only see us survive, but see us thrive at the other end. And timeframes of 3, 6, 12 months. 12 months gets pretty scary, and I'm sure we're not the only industry that feels that. But, the reality is we've got time, and this buys us more time.
Yeah. Okay, Tim Faulkner, thanks so much for talking to us, and good luck with your efforts over the next couple of months.
Thank you very much, and well wishes to all.
Okay, Tim Faulkner there from the Australian Reptile Park near Gosford.